Hi, I'm Jamie Meyer, founder of Resilience for Life and a board certified health and wellness coach, heart math provider, and yoga therapist. Today, I'm speaking with Steffany Moonaz. Steffany is the creator of the Yoga for Arthritis teacher training program and the author of Yoga Therapy for Arthritis. Steffany is also the director of research at the Maryland University of Integrative Health. And I am so honored to be a part of the wonderful program Steffany has created. I'm one of the mentors in the people coming through, so just a little bit of transparency there. But Steffany, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today about your very important work.
Absolutely, Jamie. I'm a big fan of yours as well, and happy for any opportunity we have to work together.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about your background and what led you to the creation of the Yoga for Arthritis teacher training.
Sure. So when I was young, I was a dance student. My mother was a dance teacher, and I started dancing when I was about 2, became very serious with it over the years. And I remember a particular experience that I think sort of set the stage for all of this, which was that I was having kind of a crummy day. And at this point, I don't even know what the crummy day was about, but I came into the yoga studio after school like I always did. And at some point through the dance class, I realized that the crumminess was not there anymore. So the feeling that I was having was gone, but also any notion of whatever it was that was bothering me was also gone. And I would now say that I was being mindful. I was fully immersed in the experience of the dance. And particularly what I think is powerful about that is that it was engagement in the physical body that was part of the experience of mindfulness, that I was so engrossed in that physicality that everything else fell away. And even in that moment, it occurred to me that there would be healing power in that if it could erase my crummy mood, then what could it do for people who were experiencing true suffering and who probably didn't even have an idea that this was possible, that it existed? And I think I would say that set me on the path of my dharma, which was to help alleviate suffering for people who are in pain of any kind. It turns out that I work with people who have arthritis, but I think that it's transferable to so many kinds of suffering. And that became something that was my life's work, starting even from that point. So I went on to study neuroscience because I figured whatever was happening in that experience was happening in my brain, and I wanted to know what it was and figure out then how to bring it to people. And that took me into public health, which I realized, especially back in the 90s when I was exploring all of this work, I was going to get this work to people through public health better than I'd be able to get it to people through neuroscience. So I ended up, while continuing to study dance, also studying public health, and ended up doing a PhD in public health from Johns Hopkins University in the rheumatology department. And there are a bunch of serendipitous circumstances that fell into place for this to happen. But I ended up, at this point, I had become a yoga teacher myself. And there was someone at Johns Hopkins in the rheumatology department who had taken her first yoga class, realized the power that it could have for their patients, and hired me to develop a yoga program for the patients at the Johns Hopkins Arthritis Center. That became the dissertation for my PhD. And that study, because of just excellent timing and what was going on in the world at that point, we got enough funding from enough places to make it the largest, most rigorous randomized controlled trial to date on this topic. And it then set the stage for future research that I've gone on to do with other colleagues, that other universities have gone on to do further validating this concept that yoga really can transform the way that people live with arthritis in so many ways.
Steffany, can you
So
just
while
talk?
I was doing, yeah.
I was just going to say, can you talk briefly to the incredible acceleration of research, because it's very exciting.
Yeah, sure. I'm always happy to talk about that. I wish that I had a visual for you, Jamie, and maybe I can share this with your listeners, because there was a paper published by Pam Jeter et al. That shows a trajectory of yoga-related research, specifically for clinical populations. And the curve just, escalates in an exponential fashion that in, I would say, like the early 2000s, there was very little. And there was a kind of a tipping point around 2010 where it just shot up, and the volume of yoga research exploded, the rigor of it, the seriousness with which it was being pursued, the funding that was available to conduct it. So I was on the early side of this because my research started in 2003, but that was when NCCIH, then NCAM, the center of the NIH that's focused on this kind of study, really started to come into its own and be able to fund this kind of research. To give you an idea, back when I started doing this, my mentor was told that it was career suicide to work with me on a yoga project because no one would take it seriously. And funny enough, I've built an entire career on studying just that, and she's done pretty well herself too. So now it's actually a serious pursuit to be a yoga researcher on its own. So there's still so much more to do and so much more to learn, and I'm happy to talk about that too. But it's an exciting time to be doing this work. Yeah, so where I was going with that, Jamie, is that it was because of what I was seeing in the research that I built Yoga for Arthritis, the organization, because research can stay in an ivory tower where it's only read by other researchers, or it can go out into the world where it makes a difference. Someone has to do that. Someone has to take the research out of the ivory tower and bring it into the world. And that the creation of Yoga for Arthritis, the organization, was to do just that, because there were people living with arthritis who couldn't find a safe and appropriate yoga class, especially back then. There were yoga teachers who said, I have people coming to my class who have arthritis. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to keep them safe. So I felt like this was really needed in order to bridge that gap.
Mm-hmm. How does a yoga for arthritis class differ from other practices that are now considered? I know, it's not hard now perhaps to find a beginner or a gentle class, but I know what you do is so specialized and specific. How does it differ? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so a Yoga for Arthritis class is geared toward the specific needs, challenges, priorities, limitations of people who are living with arthritis. And I'll say as an aside, arthritis is not one thing. As you well know, it's an umbrella term for over 100 different conditions. So when we think about yoga for arthritis, it's really yoga for all of those conditions that fall under that umbrella. But those are different from a beginner yogi who doesn't have those challenges, both in the way that the physical practice is modified, but also in the way that yoga is used in daily life with arthritis, which is different from daily life without it. So it's really important to me that in a Yoga for Arthritis class, we're not only modifying the physical postures to make them safe and appropriate, we're applying all of the tools and practices of yoga to the experience of life with arthritis.
Wow, what an amazing segue, because I wanted to ask you if the Yoga for Arthritis offers some sort of holistic approach that impacts all areas of life. Clearly, it seems like the answer is yes, right?
Yeah, so this happened organically as I was creating the program, because it was, well, I was trained in integral yoga as you were. And so I have always thought of yoga as a way of being in the world that encompasses a whole host of practices, whereas some yoga, especially in the West, is focused more on the physical postures. But the Panchamaya Kosha model, which looks at all of the different layers of our being, and it translates pretty well to the Western scientific model of the biopsychosocial spiritual perspective, that we have different aspects to who we are. We're not just a body. We are a body and a mind and a set of emotions and an energetic being, if you will, and a spiritual being, and that these practices operate on all of those levels a little differently, and those levels all influence each other. And so it was important to me that the Yoga for Arthritis program consider all of that, because people think about arthritis as a physical condition, but it's not. It's a whole person condition. It affects every aspect of life. It affects the way that we think, the way that we feel, the way that we engage socially with other people, what we think about in terms of meaning and purpose in our lives. And so a yoga program for that experience should also operate on all of those levels. And the Yoga for Arthritis training program actually progresses from thinking more about the very gross physical part of arthritis and yoga, and gradually moving toward the more subtle layers and even existential questions around both of those.
Yeah, and I want to add for those watching who may not be looking for training, that your book is just brilliant. I mean, in so many ways, it touches on all these layers of being, you know, the system that you talk of that is ancient, and yet it has correlation to modern science as well. So it's really a beautiful, eye-opening experience of how it can apply.
Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, we also offer tools and training and resources for people with arthritis themselves. So even if you're not a yoga teacher or a yoga therapist and you're somebody who's living with arthritis, we are looking to support that audience as well.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the teacher trainings now and the levels that are required to gain a credential?
Sure. So there are 3 levels. The first level I consider to be what every yoga teacher should know if they're going to teach yoga to anyone, anywhere. The content that we cover is applicable regardless. It's sensitive, safe, considerate, and appropriate yoga, period. And if you're a yoga teacher, there are people coming to your classes with arthritis, whether you know it or not. They may not be telling you, in fact, they're unlikely to tell you, but arthritis is so incredibly prevalent that it's very unlikely that you teach yoga and don't have students with arthritis. So I think it's just a responsible choice to get that training to be able to meet the needs of those students. The levels that follow, level 2 is a mentorship, and Jamie, you're a mentor, so feel free to add to this. But the mentorship really meets you where you are in terms of what your experience and skill set is and the context in which you're going to be working. You're paired with a mentor and you work on the areas of greatest opportunity in order to grow as a yoga teacher or therapist. And you can certainly add anything to that you feel.
Yeah, it's a wonderful experience because, as you say, everybody comes to that aspect of the training with different life experience and different teaching experience. So it's really fun to understand what people need and then to be able to fill the gaps as they continue to follow the protocol required in the program to develop their skills further as a yoga for arthritis teacher. But it touches, it's interesting. I never thought of it now that you asked this question, but it touches on more than just the physical, of course, right? It touches on all those layers of being. And of course, working one-on-one is such an intimate and supportive experience. I've found it to really be a privilege to work with people because they just blossom in ways that it's really remarkable.
Yeah. I feel like there's real transformation that happens both personally and professionally during that mentorship, which is the level 2. And then the level 3 is where the certification happens. And there's a lot of peer learning that happens there. People bring their experience of what they've been doing out in the world and learn from each other. Everyone who attends that training does a deep dive into some special topic or area of interest and brings that to bear. We do a lot more looking at working one-on-one. How do you do an intake, develop a treatment plan for different types of situations, different types of arthritis, again, operating from that whole person model in that kind of delivery. So I love level 3. It's so rich. So those are the 3 levels of training. Mm-hmm. And that gives you the certification in yoga for arthritis. Mm. And I think that, the full 3 levels is really appropriate for somebody who wants to specialize in working with this population. So if you're doing a lot of work with seniors, or you're doing a lot of work with chronic pain, or you're in an environment where a lot of those kinds of challenges show up. We also have a lot of people who have arthritis themselves and are yoga teachers or yoga therapists, and they really want to bring this work back to people who it might serve, out of their own personal experience with it.
Yeah. It's a wonderful community too. I was just thinking for myself, going through level 2 and then coming together with other professionals for level 3. You really do start to create a very viable network of like-minded professionals working in different areas. So yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll bring us to this at some point, but especially now when we all need community and we all need to find ways to feel connected and support each other, that's been very valuable.
Huge. Yeah. Thank you. Do you offer any aspect of it online now that we're all sheltered and we can't go?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked. So I'm proud to say that I think we're a little bit ahead of the curve on that. Yeah. We've been transitioning to online teaching and learning for a while now. So like many yoga trainers, I was resistant early on to conduct yoga teacher trainings online, just because there's so much that happens when you're together in a physical space. Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned, I'm the director of research at a university that does a lot of online learning. And I came to see how online learning has its own pedagogy. And there are actually ways to teach and learn online that are very unique and different from the in-person experience. If you're doing asynchronous learning, which is I deliver something, you expend time, you come back, give me your perspective, I respond to you. So we're not operating at the same time. Mm-hmm. It gives you more of a chance to reflect and to process and to play with the material, rather than being in the same room for 5 days straight where you feel like you're drinking from a fire hose. So there are actually some advantages to that, learning in that way. So the level 2, the mentorship, has been available remotely since the beginning almost. So I know you've done mentoring online a bunch, and level 3 is actually happening online starting next month. We're doing a cohort of level 3 that's online. Level 1 what we've done with level 1 are hybrid programs where a portion of it happens in person and then the rest is done online afterwards. Now, given the current environment, we're transitioning toward having the whole thing available online. So level 1 is on its way. We're not quite there yet, but it won't take us much to get it there.
That's wonderful. Wow, congratulations. I know that's a lot of work to have all.
And you can imagine we're doing that at the university too. Anything that was on campus is now going online. So yeah, I think that's a lot of people are digging in to how to make that not only possible, but also meaningful and useful in ways that are different from what we're used to.
Steffany, are you available to work privately with clients online? Do you do that? And do you enjoy that?
Yeah. I love it. I do. Yeah, because I think what happens when you do the kind of work that I do is that you become kind of a step removed from the end user. You know, I do a lot of research that trickles down and changes lives eventually. It changes policy, it changes practices, but that's downstream. I don't see it. And I train yoga teachers and yoga therapists, and they go out and do amazing work in the world that changes people's lives. But again, I don't see that either. I see how they change, but I don't see how they change the lives of others. Whereas working one-on-one with people, I have the privilege and honor of being able to support someone through their own personal journey. And as you said, happens in the level 2 mentorship, it's so incredibly profound and so rewarding. And for me to be able to even be a guide in that process is just a delight. So yes, I do both health coaching and yoga therapy on Zoom, you know, like we're doing now, or other platforms, but video chat. Yeah. And I'm happy to do that.
Oh, wonderful. Will you talk a little bit about your book? Do you have it handy?
Sure.
Do you have it with you, or?
I should have. They're downstairs. I should have grabbed one. Maybe you have yours.
Of course I do.
And I keep shifting over to the left because the sun is like streaming right in at me. Isn't that a beautiful cover?
It's a beautiful.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And it's talk a little bit about this wonderful book, please.
Yeah. So it's funny because people have been suggesting that I write a book for years, and I was so resistant to it because the book that I thought people wanted was a book about how to modify poses. And I thought, you know, there are plenty of those books, and nobody needs another one of those. And that's not what fascinates me about the application of yoga for this population. So when I was approached by the publisher and asked if I would write a book on yoga for arthritis, I said, I will write it if we can do a whole person approach. And actually that's even the subtitle, I think, is a whole person approach to
Movement
lifestyle.
And lifestyle, yeah.
Lifestyle, right. And just like the trainings, the book progresses from the physical body to spiritual questions. And I also was able to insert personal stories from people that I've worked with, both in the research studies and one-on-one and in the training. So it has people's own words about their experience. It has me sharing stories so that, you know, it's also certainly supported by science, and I'm citing the research and all of that. So it has, I feel like it's a one-stop shop for whatever you're looking for on this topic, because it really approaches it from many different angles. And whoever you are, there will be parts of it that may not interest you very much, but you're going to find what you're looking for.
I agree. There's something for everyone. And I love, love, love the case studies. They're so moving and they're inspiring, and they really do bring that personal touch to the whole Megillah. Yes.
Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome. So Steffany, how can people contact you? What's the best way for people to reach out?
So our website is arthritis.yoga.
Uh-huh.
Not .com, not .org, .yoga, arthritis.yoga. That's the whole address. So that's probably the best way to find me. You can also email me at info@arthritis.yoga. And maybe we can post that too, Jamie.
I will include it in the video. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's probably the easiest way to reach me.
Yeah. Wonderful. Steffany, thank you so much for spending the time with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jamie.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add about this evolving world and any aspect of the current challenges we're facing as a society with your background in public health or anything related to your work?
Yeah, so I'll say that all of this work is now more important than ever. There is a lot of focus on how this virus operates and what medications might work, and is there a vaccine, and when are we going to get the vaccine, and the public health measures that are so important, like social distancing and hand washing and wearing masks and all of that. And there is less attention on what we do to take care of ourselves from a whole person perspective, not just around this virus, but around all of the changes that everyone is experiencing, including grief and loss of life, but also grief and loss of certainty and stability and structure and routine and, social gathering, right? There's so much change happening. And I think that these practices are ways that we can nourish and care for ourselves in such an uncertain and ever-changing time. Yeah. And especially for people who have chronic pain and people who have autoimmune conditions, those challenges are very different. And so if you are someone who is living in that reality, or you know or love someone who is living in that reality, the need for support and connection and self-care is all the greater. So I really hope that people will make it a priority to take care of themselves, and also in ways that we can in this reality find ways to take care of each other.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Thank you. Steffany, a pleasure being with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie.
Namaste.
Namaste.